Oh, you know what I love?
Sports.
I love sports.
Sports. When
it comes to Texas A&M.
Where are you getting this information?
Let me tell you.
Welcome to TexAgs.
I need to talk a little sports with you, Ags. David Leone here with TexAgs Radio. Billy Lucci here on TexAgs Radio. Olin Buchanan.
We will develop men, we will graduate players, and we will win championships on the field.
The best way for us to win is to do it together.
Do you realize everybody knows who you are right now?
Very thankful for the 12th man. They've won us games.
Been in college baseball for a while now, but I've never experienced anything like 12th man.
That's about as pretty a throw-catch combo as there is.
I saw the safety roll, the slot fade. I knew where I needed to put the ball.
Our skill set worked great together. Like, he was more speed and I was more power, and then we put together, it was like thunder and lightning, you know.
You know, if I'm betting on anybody, it's the Aggies.
Welcome in, TexAgs Radio, presented by David Gardner Jewelers. We're here inside the Rollo Insurance Studio, and it is the Go Hour presented by The Warehouse at CC Creations. I'm Nick Savage, not David Nuno. Nuno is out for the remainder of the week, but I do have Ryan Brauninger here with me on the Go Hour. Normally OB, he's also on vacation, so, pretty much OB, so.
Good morning, Nick.
Morning, how are you?
I'm okay. The first time that anybody's ever sat in that chair that is more fit than David Nuno.
That is, bro. That is.
You're
so
in better
not
shape
true.
than David.
That is so not true.
If y'all both picked up and had to run from here around Kyle Field a couple of times,
David
you could.
Wins.
No way.
For sure. Ever since I got out of the fitness community, as David would put it,
okay.
It's just dropped off.
Well, I was trying to give you a compliment.
I
you could have
appreciate
taken that run with it, and then we could have made fun of Nuno. And because we were picking at him in terms of his fitness level, it have really irked him.
That's very
and
true.
he would have texted you or called in.
He would have probably called in. Yeah. He'd just tell you, oh well, it's funny how everyone talks and never wants to do anything. That would have been his answer. So
that's actually a pretty good impression.
Well, I've listened to him for 3 years, pretty much every single show.
That's right. Yeah.
2 weeks ago was the first time I missed an extended period of time.
When do you think you will have a good Luke Evangelist impression?
He's kind of, I don't know, his voice is higher than mine, so it's harder to hit. He's kind of monotone, but he doesn't have to.
You have to start with this grin that his
giggle. I love his laugh, by the way, Luke. We'll talk to you in a minute, so we'll get to you. But this is Coffee Talk presented by TexAgs Coffee. Beat the hell out of morning by going to texags.com/coffee. Quick rundown of what I got for y'all today here on the Tuesday edition of TexAgs Radio. We got Bronny from now to about 8:35. Got Brandon Leone, former Texas A&M running back, on Zoom. We'll talk to him at 9 o'clock, just kind of get his early thoughts on the season. Maybe he'll be paying attention to some SEC Media Day storylines. We'll check in with him there. We got Chris Phillips from SEC Unfiltered joining at 9:35. Good dude. We'll talk all things Aggie sports, SEC, all that fun stuff. Tom Hart at 10 o'clock, as always, on Tuesdays. And just to give you your David and Billy fill for the day, we'll kind of touch back on what those two had to say yesterday. If you missed the Monday edition of the show, Billy and David really had a good conversation, I think, about just, what to expect from A&M football going into the 2024 season. But to start off the Go Hour here with Bronny, we got a couple new commits to talk about, and a football commit I don't think you and David got to yesterday, but we'll touch on that a little bit later. But a new commit from Rice.
Dude, I don't know. I don't even know. Hold on. Football commit. What did I miss?
Ryan Gilbert. That's last week, so we'll get to that.
Dude, it's so it's all running together right now.
Yeah.
I'm so thankful for Hal and even Kay Drawn, who's doing a great job for us in South Houston. I'm so thankful for those guys pulling me through that camp season.
Yeah.
Because it's difficult to cover camps and state 7-on-7, and then, that's typically something that I'm at all of them. Omaha precludes me from being able to go to the football camps here because that's when they happen. But state 7-on-7, I went out there for maybe an hour and a half, and that's all I was able to cover because this baseball stuff was just going too fast, and we were trying to cover man, these telemarketers at 8:05 every day. I've got to ask them if they want to buy drugs. I need to do that on air, but I feel like that would get clipped, and then we could get in trouble for that.
Oh. Do you not block them?
I don't know. My wife says she's put my number on the do not call list, but it doesn't seem to matter. They get around it every time.
It's crazy.
And I think it's somebody. Maybe this one. Somebody called me about a bill that I've already paid. I paid it yesterday, so I don't know. Anyway, I even got my schedule. So yeah, so for Jason and Cade to cover State 7-on-7 whenever I was chasing the baseball stuff, that was such a relief, and it just speaks, I think, to the depth of our company, right? Like these guys that can come in and, you know, if I can't be at something, then you trust other people to pick up the slack, and we just got good people working for us right now, man. And it's I think, you know, especially like for a kid like Cade, he's like young and hungry in Houston to make his way, and he's asking for more responsibility, and we're giving it to him, and he's seems to be responding to it well. So he'll have a big one to cover this week, tomorrow actually, and Kelshawn Johnson, the receiver from Hitchcock, which is right down there in Galveston County, and would be a big boost for this A&M class at receiver. But yeah, just the last 14 days has been such a whirlwind. Like if you would have told me or asked me when did Caden Sorrell reaffirm his commitment to A&M or reaffirm that he's coming back to A&M, I would have said 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Because that's how long it's felt. You know, the Caden Kent Grand Slam in the Super Regional was like 28 days ago. It feels like 4 years.
Yeah.
So, anyway, I'm sure I threw you off track there.
Good. You're good. Hey, take it and run with it. I was going to touch on Benjamin Royo from Rice, and one of the two new
baseball commits.
Baseball commits. So we'll start there. In 49 games with the Owls last season, hit 261, 13 home runs, 40 RBIs. In your tweet you put out about him, he said he could play all around the diamond, utility guy.
Yeah.
Just what do you see in him?
So he was a kid that he stood out whenever Rice came here in 2023. Watched that game, and I'm like, man, the Royo kid is a freshman. He swings the bat. I think he may have homered here at A&M, and you just watch him take pregame in and out, and he moves well, and athletic kid. I think he's 6'2", 6'3", and so when I heard that A&M was looking at him as like just a utility infielder, I was like, okay, I like that, because the numbers took a dip last year as a sophomore, and outside of at A&M, we've gotten kind of used to these guys keep making steps forward. Now, we saw that in 2023 where some guys had some unfortunate steps back. So it does happen in baseball. But I really like Royo's overall skill profile. I like that he can play all those infield positions. I wouldn't say he could play first base, but second, short, and third. It provides you with a little sock in the bat from the right-handed side if he's going well. And I just like overall his ability to impact a season. And, you know, how important was the depth infield or the infield depth for A&M in 2024? It was massively important. The fact that you could have, you started with Ryan Targach at second, and then you went to Chestnut, and he got hurt with his oblique, and then you went to Kent. You had a smattering of Jack Bell in there. So just being able to have quality pieces throughout the course of the season, somebody's going to get banged up. Unless you're extremely lucky, somebody's going to get banged up or have to miss a couple of weeks or maybe 6-7 games due to something nagging or maybe an ankle or whatever it could be. And so you want to help mitigate those concerns by adding quality depth. And what they did with Ben Royo is they added a really quality depth piece. They also did that with Jamal George.
Yep.
And Jamal George is super interesting, right? Because Jamal George, whereas Royo can play any infield position, Jamal George can play every position on the field outside of probably first base. A kid born in Puerto Rico, goes to Alabama State, and is the SWAC freshman of the year, can really catch, and like he's a good catcher. Like he's going to add to your catching depth. I think A&M will still go out and add one more piece there if they can, if it's a quality guy, especially somebody who can swing the bat a little bit. But he adds to your catching depth, which you desperately needed. He can play all the infield positions. He's been playing second base some for Team USA with Gavin Grahovic this summer. and he can run around the outfield too. So, like, again, another really interesting piece. And this is a kid, because of he got 2 years of eligibility left too. He could be here for 2 years because he does so many different things. I don't know that he's kind of settled in on a spot yet, but he's a baseball player, like a real baseball player. And it's interesting that he was born in Puerto Rico and he's playing for Team USA. So he must have a real, a draw to being an American and wanting to represent the USA. So that's a really cool part of his story as well. And I'll have to talk to Gavin to see, Grahovic's will have watched him play a bunch of games this summer. And so talking to Gavin, that will be he'll have a better insight probably than anybody about Jamal George's game. But I really like that pickup.
Yeah.
And look, whenever A&M hired Mike Earley, I hate to say that there was pressure on him to do what he's done, but there really kind of was.
Absolutely,
because there was like some expectation that, okay, if we're going to hire Mike as, a guy that everybody loves, but he's unproven as a head coach, one of the things that we really need him to do is keep this roster intact and build on it. And if he goes out and closes on a few portal arms, like, this roster is going to be a top 5 roster entering next spring, in my opinion. I don't know. We did the numbers on the home runs yesterday. I don't know how you look at that potential lineup. Now, they've got to survive the draft, right? They've got to – who knows? Somebody will probably make a run at Gavin Cash. I don't know if it'll be enough to get him away from coming to A&M. You could see teams make a run at Wyatt Hensler, teams make a run at Matthew Bergevin. But you feel pretty good about what you got in terms of bats and what it'll look like. The question mark starts to come on the mound. Like, what happens with Prager? Does Aschenbeck get that year back? I'm leaning toward no. But what happens with Prager? I mean, if you got Ryan Prager back to what you've already got on the mound, holy crap. What is the status of Shane Sadeo? Is he healthy? Does he need surgery? I think we'll find out a little bit more about that in the next couple of weeks. But you could be looking at a pitching staff that's pretty salty, and there's still more to go get out there. I think they need to go find one, maybe 2 more right-handers to kind of give yourself some depth and some versatility throughout the course of a game and season in the bullpen. You'd like a couple more right-handed options.
Real quick on George, in 50 games last season, he hit .310, 9 home runs, 35 RBIs, and like you said, played all over the place. I did want to bring this up on air. We kind of talked about it off air yesterday with Carson over in the Social Center. Just I feel like this topic needs to kind of be hit on with JUCO versus D1. Like, people will see A&M taking JUCO players and be like, "Why?"
He was a hater.
Yeah,
he's a JUCO hater.
I wasn't going to throw him under the bus.
No, I will, because I'm a JUCO bandit, dude. I played junior college.
And I obviously you're much brighter baseball mind than me, but I call games for the Bombers. I get to see a lot of those kids and watch them as they get opportunities at Division I schools. Perfect example of that, Travis Chestnut. He's one of the guys that came from that rank and came up and was fun to watch. Evan Aschenbeck, like we mentioned. So can you kind of explain why it's important to take a look at some of these JUCO guys?
Well, now especially because college baseball recruiting at the high Division I level is changed so much, where it really only matters. Like, I don't want to say it only matters, but when you look at freshman impacting seasons, it's guys like Grahovic and Lavalette, like unicorns, right? There's a little bit more leeway on the pitching side because it's a little bit easier jump for pitchers. So where you saw Weston Moss, Isaac Morton, Caden Wilson, these guys impact seasons as freshman pitchers. Sorrell, Grahovic, Lavalette, I mean, how many other true freshmen are really impacting season? Caden Kent played some as a true freshman, but there's just not a lot. And so where are those players going? So if they're going to A&M and Texas and Arkansas and LSU and they're getting there and they're not playing, they're going to go, man, I just want to play. Where are they going to go? Well, they're either going to transfer out and go to perhaps other mid-majors, or they're going the junior college route. And so junior college baseball, what we're seeing in the last probably 12 months is junior college baseball making a comeback. And it is supplementing rosters across the country. It's supplementing A&M's roster. They just got two right-handed pitchers, one from Cisco Junior College, one from McLennan. They're going to continue to tap into that, especially when the junior college programs in the state of Texas are as quality as they are, not only in the terms of talent and competition, but also with the coaching. I mean, there are some really good coaches in the junior college ranks in the state of Texas right now. I think tapping into those programs is vitally important. It always has been, but there was a time where junior college, it was right before NIL hit and the transfer portal really picked up, where I thought we saw a tick down in junior college prospects moving on to the next level and continuing their careers where they go from junior college to either mid-major or high D1. Mm-hmm. I think that's making a comeback because there's better players in junior college now than there ever have been. For instance, like you go look at what their roster was last year in 2024 and look where they're sending their players. Mm-hmm. I mean, Texas just got a kid from McLennan. A&M's got a kid from McLennan. I know they sent one to Kansas State. They've got a Canadian kid that catches that. If Canadians are different because the transcript stuff and so they typically have to graduate from junior colleges. Mm-hmm. But that kid will probably be drafted out of McLennan as one of the top college catchers. So there are some programs in the state, whether it's McLennan, Blinn, Weatherford has had great programs, San Jack, all over the state where you're looking at and they're going, man, there's real players there that can help supplement my roster, and even I can go get impact players. Carson yesterday was talking about he couldn't believe that McLennan was putting out players. Like, where you been? McLennan's been good. Mm-hmm. And he was talking about junior college guys. I was like, hey, the best relief pitcher in A&M history was a junior college transfer.
Yep.
And so, yeah, you have to be able to tap into those, especially in this state. And there's just too many good players, too, for the sport that's only allocated 11.7 scholarships for their roster. You have to be able to mix and match with how you get, you've got to get not tricky. You've got to be really savvy with how your scholarships are allocated, mm-hmm. right? And so tapping into, you don't get a full ride for a high school player. So maybe can you split the scholarship between a high school player and a junior college player? Like, you have to be able to do those things with a baseball roster until they increase those scholarship limits. And so, yeah, junior college baseball in this state will always be important. I'm not saying that you've got to go get 8-9 guys from the junior college ranks, but if you go get 3 or 4 and they impact your roster the way that they can because of those JUCOs being so full of like really talented kids, then I think you have to do it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. If you want to be a part of the conversation, send us a text, 979-693-1150. We'll read that on the Boss Firearms hotline. Boss Firearms, your local experts. They buy used guns, ammo, and accessories. Go to bossfirearms.com to start earning money like a boss today. Let's go around the room. Behind the glass doing my normal job is Luke Evangelist. Luke, can you please give us one of your giggles?
Howdy, good morning, y'all.
Oh.
My giggle, it has to be natural.
That's
I
very
can't
true.
just fake it
Yeah.
for the camera. And there's a lot of pressure on me, mainly Richard being directly behind me. You two know our history and how he likes to, let's just say I'm afraid. Yeah, he likes to torture me, and let's just say I'm afraid of him being behind me, and I have to look behind me and make sure everything's okay before I can even focus on doing my job. So, Nick, if something does happen here and it goes haywire, you know exactly who to blame. It's Richard.
Okay, got it. You got any news, notes, something that caught your eye, Luke?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been watching the Summer League because, well, let's just be honest here. There's not really much else going on other than major soccer tournaments. And I know I will not bore our audience with soccer talk. So let's go ahead and head over to the Summer League. Quentin Jackson playing for the Pacers and Dexter Dennis playing for the Cavs. Both of those guys will start their Summer League seasons Friday, July 12th. Dexter Dennis playing at 4 o'clock against the Orlando Magic, and Quentin Jackson playing against the Nets at 8 o'clock. Boots Radford has been playing for the Spurs. He's only gotten action in limited action, I would say, is a pretty fair statement. I believe he's averaging like 5 or 6 minutes. The Spurs have not been playing well, so he's been getting in at the end of games. He's got about 6 points, 4 total rebounds. So, doing his thing, but we're going to need to see more playing time. They've got another game on Saturday, July 13th against the Trailblazers on ESPN2 at 8 p.m., so make sure to tune in for that. And then Dexter Dennis and the Cavs are going to be playing Bronny James, and I know Bronny's a hot topic around here about whether it's fair or not he should be in the league with the contract he has. I'm sure y'all will get into that later. But yeah, so Dexter Dennis, it would be much appreciated if you could just dunk on him and the nepotism talks.
Thank you, Luke. Carson, we'll get to you on the other side of this break here. We're going to hit a break, but first let's hear from the Association of Former Students. For more than 140 years, the Association of Former Students has helped continue the oldest and most inspiring tradition of Aggies helping Aggies. You've heard about all the specific support that the association has given, everything from student scholarships, student assistant programs, Aggie band, silver taps, you name it. That's what the association does. But have you ever stopped and wondered why? Where Aggies share their stories and unique perspectives? Why does the association support Texas A&M and Texas Aggies? Why is the association always here, there, and everywhere for the Aggie Network? You may be surprised to learn that the answer to why is as unique as your own Aggie story. So I encourage you to check out IamTheWhy.com, where Aggies share their stories and perspective. IamTheWhy.com. You can hear the why, see the why, and discover why Aggies like you are the why. That's IamTheWhy.com. IamTheWhy.com. It's the Association of Former Students. Welcome back in. TexAgs Radio presented by David Gardner's Jewelers. We're here inside the Rollo Insurance Studio, and it is the Go Hour presented by CC Creations. Maroon never looked so good with Maroon U. And now we're going to go over to the Angry Elephant News and Social Center. The Aggies gather at the Angry Elephant. Carson Stein, hater of all JUCOs, is over there. Carson, good morning, sir.
Good morning, guys. Just to let everyone know, I'm not a hater of all JUCOs. Just to get that out there. I don't appreciate getting thrown under the bus by the two hosts this morning.
I just came with factual statements. You interpret them how you want to.
Okay. All right. I see how it is. Let's.
Why? I mean, look. The thing, it's not. I'm not picking on Carson here. The thing with baseball, especially right now, we're seeing it on our message boards like crazy. It's never been more popular. Texas A&M baseball's never been more popular than it is right now.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been the second most popular sport at this school for the vast majority of its existence. There's been some times where hoops has maybe surpassed it, but it's kind of short-lived, and then Aggie baseball takes it over as that number 2 spot. And I don't think that it'll ever catch number 1. But the gap has closed between 2 and 1.
Mm-hmm.
And what we're seeing is that there's so many more people interested in baseball and baseball recruiting and how it works. And so what he's saying about junior colleges maybe is a lot of people just don't understand their meaning and how important they are to filling in roster gaps, but also providing teams with impact players. Was it the 2023 TCU team? Their best player was a junior college player.
Mm-hmm.
I just think maybe a lot of folks now that are new to how baseball recruiting works, and they just see junior colleges, and they're like, well, this kid must not be any good because he had to go to a junior college. Man, everybody develops at a different rate, and everybody's timeline is different on how they develop and how they're recruited. And so they are important. They will always be important, especially to the programs in this state, because the junior college circuit is so good.
Absolutely. Carson, you got any text messages on the text line for us?
I do have one from Travis in College Station saying, "Good morning, TexAgs crew. What is the latest on Troy Wansing?
Wansing.
I'll have to ask about Troy. I know the intent is there for him to return, and hopefully that he's healthy and he's past that back issue that cost him basically an entire season. I think he pitched once in 2024. And a healthy Troy Wansing is a good thing. It's a very good thing. And obviously an impact left-handed arm that has pitched in this league and was, really successful at Purdue prior to coming to Texas A&M. And he is one of the guys on the roster that if he's healthy, he has basically an unhittable pitch. That slider, the way the metrics on it, the analytics on it say it is really, really tough to hit for right-handers or left-handers. So I think a healthy Troy Wansing will definitely, again, bolster the pitching staff, and I think the intent is that he comes back and gives it a go for the 2025 season.
Absolutely. Carson, any more?
We got one from Jason from Fred, Texas, saying, anything on Wyatt coming to the Aggies?
I'm guessing it's talking about Wyatt Sanford. So all Wyatt Sanford did, and I think I spoke about this yesterday with David, was reaffirm his commitment to Texas A&M. A lot of the guys that were in that signing class, not say a lot, there are a couple of guys in that signing class that had asked for and gotten a release from their letter of intent after the coaching change happened. All Wyatt was doing was saying basically, I'm not interested in going anywhere else other than Texas A&M if I don't play professional baseball. Mm-hmm. He has not and will not remove his name from the Major League Draft. And I don't think it would be wise for him to do because there's still some teams that are really interested in giving him the amount of money that he wants. And so I think if, he and Ryan Prager should be viewed through the same lens if you're an Aggie baseball fan. Like if you get them to school, it's just cherry on top,
mm-hmm.
right? Those two guys I would suspect are going to play professional baseball. So Ali Camarillo is another one. But, Mike Earley might be in a little bit of a pickle if Camarillo were to come back and Sanford comes to school, and then you got Sawyer Farr, and then you got Jamal George, and you got Caden Kent, and you got Wyatt Hensler. You'd have to sort through all that. But, I just certainly think that, Ali, I wish him nothing but the best if he's going off to play pro ball. And I think that was kind of the goal whenever he came to Texas A&M, was to improve his profile as a player in the SEC, and he certainly did that before he headed to professional baseball. But, yeah, Wyatt Sanford and really Sawyer Farr as well, hugely talented infielders coming into that freshman class.
Absolutely. Let's hit a break here. On the other side, I want to touch on, like I mentioned, Ryan Gilbert, kind of get your thoughts on him, because I don't think he's gotten any airtime since that commitment later last week over the holiday weekend. So we'll hit a break here, talk a little football. On the other side, you're listening to TexAgs Radio, presented by David Gardner Schulers. Little Fleetwood Mac bringing you back here on TexAgs Radio, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers. We're here inside the Rollo Insurance Studio, and it is the Go Hour presented by the warehouse at CC Creations. Nick Savage filling in for David Nuno. He's out on vacation. Ryan Brauninger filling in for OB here on the Go Hour. OB. Bronny, let's talk a little.
Don't you ever do that
I caught
again.
myself. Let's talk a little football recruiting. Why not? Ryan Gilbert, 2026 cornerback, committed to A&M this past holiday weekend. OB, your thoughts on Ryan Gilbert?
First of all, yeah, A&M's presence and reignition in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, hugely important. It's something that we talked about when Mike Elko came in here, that they had to reestablish themselves up there, and they've certainly done that. And they did it in the 2025 class, and now they're doing it here in 2026 to start things off with two commitments up there, Markel Ford and Ryan Gilbert in the class of 2026. Yeah, so I think Ryan Gilbert, for me, will be a really good indicator of how they do with their eval process, right? Because
we got some film guys. If y'all can roll that for us.
It's so 5'11", 6 foot, 175 pounds right now, and I love this kid's ceiling. And I think that his best football is way in front of him. And I like that they took a kid that is still on the up and up in terms of his development, like not as close to the finished product as some of the other players in the state, but I think that it's coming, and he's made big moves in terms of his overall testing numbers, how he runs, his physicality. I think this is a kid that's got an arrow pointed straight up, and by the time that this class is done, I think he could end up being in the top 20 players in the state of Texas. And so I like this early eval. I like an early take. And again, man, like this movement in Dallas is certainly it's more than noticeable. Like, they have gone in and done a fantastic job in the Metroplex and really put Jason Howell to work. And it looks like right now that if you're betting on, the 2025 class, but that might be split evenly, Dallas and Houston, and between with the out of state guys, a smattering of those out of state guys, but. Yeah, for a while it was like A&M was getting 10 from Houston for every 2 in Dallas, and it's certainly not that way anymore. So I've been really pleased with their plan up there and also their execution, and that's a credit to Mike Elko, but also a credit to the staff that works that region.
Was it the 25 class or the 26 class where I remember you saying that the Houston area was the hotbed of the talent?
It's 26.
It's 26. Okay.
Yeah, and there's a lot of really good players in 26. 25 is good. Like 25 is a pretty well-rounded class. It's got some positions where you wish it was a little bit deeper. Quarterback, most notably, just in this overall in the state. But no, 26 looks like it's going to be really, really good too. And you're going to have more years in recruiting the state of Texas where you're going, man, the talent's really good. Then you're going to instances where you're going to say, oh, it's a slow year, it's a down year in the state. It's just too many good players, especially through the course of the metropolitan areas, for you to really ever have a chance to say that. But yeah, man, you got to be super happy with what they've done in Dallas, and I think that will continue.
Absolutely. Let's flip the script here. I know you're not one of the ones heading up to SEC Media Days with us or anything, but from your perspective, is there ever anything interesting that comes out of these deals for you at all? Are you looking for a specific coach to speak or something like that? Obviously Elko.
Yeah, hearing Elko speak, and I think he'll be super impressive for everybody that's there that hasn't heard him speak or really hasn't done a deep dive on A&M football under his leadership. I think that he will be one of the main attractions because he's one of the new faces in the league. Then obviously Texas and Oklahoma coming in. Hear what Sark has to say, Brent Venables, about what they're facing with the league. Do they have a good understanding of what it's like on the week in, week out basis? That, I think, is something that has been lost on. I don't really deal with a lot of Oklahoma people, but the Texas folks, I'm like, man, it's just different. Like, I'm just telling you, it's not about going and beating Arkansas at their place. It's that the fact that you've got Ole Miss coming into your place the next week, and then you got to go on the road to Bama, and then you get Florida, and then you get South Carolina. That's just every week, what you like, your level of play has to be at its top level because anybody in the league can beat you, and the margins are so fine. And that's with just about any sport. But there is, I think, some acclimation period unless you've got in A&M's acclimation period really was put on hold because of Johnny and Mike Evans.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like the acclimation period didn't really happen because you had two college football Hall of Famers, lining up on the same side of the football, and also an offensive line that was full of NFL players. But I think there is some acclimation period for a football team that has been used to playing in a certain league to have to transition. Now we'll see. Texas has got really good players. Mm-hmm. Oklahoma's got good players, but I think Texas has got a more well-rounded roster to help combat what it is going to be like on the week-in, week-out basis. But just hearing those two head coaches and see what they say about the league. Obviously, Lane Kiffin's going to give you some sound bites. But outside of that, I don't think Kalen DeBoer is going to say anything crazy, being the new guy at Bama, but he'll get a lot of attention. I miss the days of Mike Leach, being able to stand in front of a microphone and have an open room of people that are just waiting to see what he says. And so I think for the soundbite purposes, the only one that I'm interested in hearing from is Lane Kiffin. And then, some of these coaches that are on the hot seat in the league, like how much does the media put Sam Pittman's feet to the fire or Billy Napier's feet to the fire about the expectations for this season? What does Billy Napier say about DJ Lagway? Because everybody in Gainesville wants that kid to play and play early.
Yeah.
But he's got a returner, he's got a veteran in front of him. But if your season's on the line and potentially your coaching tenure at a university, how quickly do you go to Lagway? And then if you go to Lagway too early and he's not ready, what does that do to Lagway's growth? Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of interesting storylines, I think, in Gainesville too.
Shamar Turner, Torian York, and Trey Zune are the three player representatives for A&M. How cool is it to see Torian head up there as a sophomore? That just, to me, speaks volumes about, I know you have a good relationship with him, and he's awesome every time I've ever interacted with him in here, but how cool is that for him?
Yeah, when you think about where his life was 24 months ago and what it is now, it's pretty remarkable turnaround. Not turnaround, because he was going to go play college football, but just his profile as a player and now as an NFL prospect and one of the top linebackers in the SEC, and he's going to be really good in front of the microphone and represent Texas A&M extremely well, if I had to guess. And he's so well-spoken. He's a very thoughtful kid, and you can tell when he says stuff, he's thought about it and has some meaning behind it. He's just not going to give some routine answers. Like, he's going to think about the questions, and he's going to do his best to give a personable answer. And so, I'm happy for Torian. I thought maybe like Nick Scorton would go, but Shamar Turner's obviously it's a great representation too of A&M. With Shamar's been here for a while, but I thought Scorton would be a kid that would, he's so funny and he's got a great personality, but you go with Shamar because he's been around the program and he's been here a while, and Zune as well. So veterans, all three of them really veterans that should do a good job of representing A&M.
And one last question here for you before we hit a break here, and I'm planning on asking pretty much every guest here on the show today this question, just because I thought about it. I was like, I don't know if we've really touched on this, but what do you think will be the most noticeable differences on the field between the previous regime at A&M and this coaching staff at A&M? What will we, someone like me who doesn't really understand the X's and O's, what will I be able to see and be like, oh, that's different, that's refreshing?
Well, what does organization and efficiency look like on a football field? Mm-hmm. However you want to describe that, I think A&M is going to get more of that. So less pre-snap penalties, breaking the huddle and getting to the line of scrimmage with plenty of time to go, not having to call timeouts after TV timeouts, and not having to waste timeouts because you can't get lined up in the middle of the first quarter, and just different stuff like that. And then efficiency, I think you look at like specifically Colin Klein's offenses at Kansas State and how good they were in the red zone. mean, how many times did A&M have to settle for field goals last year? So I think organization and efficiency are the two words that I think that what I expect from Mike Elko coach football teams, like I think they're going to be that. Like, and if you take the talent that A&M's got and you organize it and you make it run efficiently, what does that look like in terms of wins? And so people ask me all the time, like, how many games do you think the football team's going to win, or how's the football team going to be? I've got no idea. But I've got a pretty good idea that they are going to be more organized, more structured, more efficient, more disciplined, all those things that help you win football games regardless of the amount of talent you've got on your roster.
Absolutely. We'll hit a break here on the other side. A few closing thoughts in the 8 o'clock hour, and then we'll get to Brandon Leone and Chris Phillips of SEC Unfiltered in the 9 o'clock hour. Keep it right here. You're listening to TexAgs Radio, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers. Welcome back in. TexAgs Radio presented by David Gardner Jewelers. We're here inside the Rollo Insurance Studio. Go Hour presented by the Warehouse at CC Creations coming to a close here. We're going to go back over to the Angry Elephant News and Social Center. Carson, what do you got for us?
I got Greg McElroy released his preseason top 25 teams, 25 through 11, and the Aggies come in at number 20, with a few notable teams in front of them being Kansas State at 19, Oklahoma State at 16, Oklahoma at 17, and LSU at 15.
Interesting. We'll try to catch up with
your boy
Greg
Chris Phillips has A&M way down.
I know. I'm gonna ask him about it, but
he's got Ole Miss at 2.
Yeah,
in the league.
I saw that. That's interesting. Today, or I guess this week is SEC Unfiltered's list week, so I'm sure we'll be getting a lot of fun stuff to talk about, and I'm sure he'll be in Dallas.
Chris is
next
great.
week as
I got
well.
to meet Chris in person in Omaha. I've done a bunch of stuff with him, but yeah, you have to ask him about his preseason.
I think
SEC.
Even with his, again, it's way too early, but he released his way early Omaha 8. I think he had Texas in.
Yeah.
No Aggies in that, so that's fun there. But Carson, any text messages you want to touch on before we send Brawny off?
We just got one from Bosis and Katie says, "Can Ryan please talk about Ryan LeBlanc flipping to us?"
Kyron LeBlanc. Kyron, junior college arm from South Louisiana originally, has just steadily started to throw harder from the time he was in high school. Then he goes to Cisco Junior College, and it's depending on what you want to listen to. I've gotten some reports from guys that have seen him throw that seen him be in triple digits, and there's some video where it says it's 102. We'll see. I mean, he throws hard, right? He throws as hard as Chris Cortez. Let's just say that. But one of the things he's got to do is kind of rein it in. He'll have a tendency to spray the ball kind of all over the place. So it's a really, really fun piece of clay for Jason Kelly to work with and see if you can get him in the strike zone, because if you can't, it is power stuff. I mean, it's electric. And just like you saw Cortez, like when he had it going, he was just mowing through guys. I always think back to that outing against Louisiana in the regional final where the Louisiana hitters are walking back to the dugout with looks on their faces like, I can't do anything with that. I can't hit that. So Kyron LeBlanc, that's his top end, is to be that kind of arm in the SEC. So, but he's got some work to do. It'll be a really important fall for him and Jason Kelly.
How many guys on the A&M roster can reach up towards triple digits? I know not everyone can, but who's living 97, 98 around there?
Well, if Caden Wilson will be one.
Well, yeah, that's right.
And I think if you get Weston Moss is interesting because I think a full year in the weight room, and there's certainly the potential for him to get there. Isaac Morton, if he comes back, he could be a guy that you could see throw 100 miles an hour. Jason Bowden, he's still in the transfer portal. If he comes back, there's 100 miles an hour in him in his future, I think. And I'm trying to think if there's anybody else that I'm missing off the top of my head. Just big power stuff. They're recruiting at that level, though. The fresh corn kid that they got out of McLennan, he has just made steady ticks up, whereas in the early spring this season, I think his best ball was 93, 94, and as the end of the season, he got close 96, 97, and so that's a kid that continues to make big moves up in terms of velocity. So, and you just never know with the development now. Jeremy McMillan coming back in as a strength coach who is extremely highly regarded. Some of these guys that may be in that 90 to 93 range could see more jumps in their velocity, especially if they're younger guys and there's time for them to do it.
Absolutely. Thank you, Brawny. You'll be in the host chair tomorrow. So for all of you who
lots
want
of Brawny this
more
week.
Brawny, you'll get 3 hours of him tomorrow.
And I plan on having a little fun tomorrow. Actually, I'm working on some really cool guests.
Yeah. So stay tuned for tomorrow. Brawny, thank you again. Coming up in the 9 o'clock hour, we'll talk to Brandon Leone to kick things off the top of the hour. Then Chris Phillips of SEC Unfiltered at 9:35. We'll talk SEC baseball, SEC football, SEC media days, all that fun stuff. So don't go anywhere. Keep it right here on TexAgs Radio, presented by David Gardner Jewelers. Welcome back in. TexAgs Radio presented by David Gardner's Jewelers. We're here inside the Rollo Insurance Studio. Nick Savage filling in for David Nuno, who's out the rest of the week. Again, Bronny tomorrow. I'll be back Thursday. And then Luke and Matthew Dawson will be in the host chairs on Friday. But for now, let's go out to the Boss Firearms Hotline and talk to our good friend of the program. I don't think we've talked to him in a while, Mr. Brandon Leone. What's up, Brandon?
What's up, Nick? How are you, buddy?
I'm good. I know you've been kind of on a run of vacations here lately. Were you up in Utah, or is that where you were?
Yeah, we took my youngest son turned 1 on July 6th, and we were just trying to look at something to do out of the ordinary, and we found a good place up in Deer Valley. And so we went up to Deer Valley for the 4th, 5th, and 6th. It ended up being a day extended. You can hear I'm kind of sick too, but on his first birthday, Titus got an ear infection, so we had to push our flight to the next day, take it to urgent care. So it's been a sleepless last few nights for sure.
Well, hopefully he's doing better. But I guess, I wanted you to come on and talk a little Aggie football, but I know you were very, very invested in the Aggie baseball run this past season in Omaha and all that. And, I keep up with your Twitter feed, and with everything that transpired with Jim Schlossnagle leaving to the University of Texas, you had some fun takes on loyalty and whatnot. So I guess I'll just start by asking you, what were your thoughts on that whole situation and how everything played out?
Well, I mean, obviously it was the timing of it, I think, was one of the worst I've ever seen. But at the end of the day, I think when y'all had Jace on the show the other day, he said it best. You just kind of got to move on. But initially when it happened, I couldn't believe it. But the funny thing is, my brother-in-law texted me in April, genuinely texted me in April, and was like, "Hey man, I heard Schloss is going to Texas." And of course, at the time, I was like, "What are you talking about? Like, no, he's not. That's crazy." Then as the season progressed, he said it a few more times, and I just thought nothing of it.
Mm-hmm.
And then when our boy Zane asked that question, I was like, "Oh, he's out." Like, as soon as I saw his response, I was like, "Oh, that dude's gone," because that was the easiest layup of all time for someone that's staying put.
Mm-hmm.
And so, obviously, I hurt for the players more than anybody. Ultimately, they played their tails off. One of the most fun seasons I've ever, probably the most fun, minus Johnny's 2012 season, that as an Aggie fan or alumni that I've experienced. And so for them to not kind of be able to process that loss and just the amazing time and run that they had as a team, and then that's the news that they come down with, y'all have talked about it 100 times. I felt really bad for them. As an Aggie, obviously, I was like, what's this guy doing? I can't believe he would do it. It makes no sense when you think about our fan base and our people and our support. But at the end of the day, unfortunately, especially today, it is a business. And I will tell you, this relationships go a long way. I can tell you that as a professional. And so ultimately, I think that guy's relationship with CDC or whatever his name is played a big part in that. I think that's the only reason he's gone. But it is what it is, man. I'm happy with what Coach Earley's doing. I'll be there to support him and the team at the TexAgs kickoff event. And I look forward to – look, at the end of the day, here's the only thing we can do, Nick. We can do our part as fans. Donate to the 12th man. Give to Texas Aggies United. We can whine and complain or do whatever, say whatever we want on Twitter and get in our feelings. But ultimately, the best way to support is to give. And so that's what we're doing. That's what my family's doing.
Absolutely. So. I think the whole Aggie fan base is bought in to do that as well. So flipping the page to football here, it's crazy with the baseball team and everything that happened. And now we're here a week away from SEC Media Days. How short, I guess, the offseason is starting to feel. I guess a month or two, a little bit more than that away from kickoff. So just really broad question to start off here is, what are you most excited for Aggie football in 2024?
Leadership change. Like I'm really excited about Mike Elko. I really am. I think just the way he's carried himself from back to when he was just a coordinator. I think the guy, it's, again, super cliche, but he's a football guy. He's not caught up in all the hype. Just look at it. Never mind, I was going to say a joke, but I'm not going to. But, you could tell he's just focused on football and developing this culture and this roster. They've made some great additions in the portal. They're doing a great job in recruiting. He's, in the midst of all this baseball craziness on the low, Mike Elko and his team and his staff are putting together a great recruiting class. Again, we've said this for a few years. We have a top 10 roster, and now it's just a matter of can we get out there and execute, and what are we going to do? So number one would be leadership change. Number two would be number 15 being healthy. I'm excited to see what will look like if we can have Connor Wigman for an entire season. I still believe with everything in me, especially being from Houston, that he is an elite quarterback. He just needs to have protection, right? And so that would be my third is how's our O-line going to look? But if you can protect Connor, man, we have the skill guys around him for him to show. I think he's got greatness in him, and I will say that to the end, man. I'm excited to see him play.
Absolutely. And I asked Bronny this earlier. He was on with me in the first hour. What do you think is going to be the most noticeable difference between the previous coaching regime and this new one? Like well, the way I phrase it is someone like me who doesn't really understand the X's and O's, what will I be able to see and be like, hey, that's different. That's a welcome change.
Toughness. I think toughness. If you think back to those teams, those first few years when Elko was here under Jimbo, we were very physical. We're a very tough team. And I feel like towards the end of the Jimbo era, we just seemed soft, not just physically. We were soft physically. We got pushed around some, but mentally, I think mental toughness and just, I would think mental toughness with Elko. I mean, that's something that I think he talks about often, developing the whole player, not just physically. But I think seeing these guys believe in each other, believe in what the coaches are doing, I think that's going to go a long way in, a long SEC schedule, a long football season, which, as you know, the football season's long. When you throw in 2-a-days, it's exciting to see. And I think that we're going to be a tough team. That's what I'm going to see. That's my thought process.
Talking to Brandon Leone here on the Boss Firearms Hotline. Brandon, what position do you think will be the biggest strength, position group, I should say, will be the biggest strength for A&M?
I think defensive line, again. I think our front, especially with the addition of the guy that stood out in the spring game from Purdue.
Nick Scourton, yep.
And then the guys that we had that are returning, in addition to some of the guys we're bringing in. I think defensive line is going to be our strength and continue to be for a while. And so, and that's important, man. You think about the SEC, it used to just be, back in the day when I was a kid, it was a running back league, it was a run league. Now you have elite quarterback play all the time, and there's not really many weeks where you have a chance to have an off game in the SEC. And so the importance of putting pressure on those talented quarterbacks with this new age offense and the way it's quick spread, get the ball out fast, you have to be able to get to the quarterback. And that's one thing I love about Elko, the way he disguises his defenses, the way that he creatively brings pressure from a lot of different areas. You have to have multiple packages. You have to be able to get guys out in coverage. You have to be able to get guys on the blitz. And if you can operate with a great defensive mind like Elko and your 3 or 4 down linemen can create pressure on their own, that can cause a lot of disruption for quarterbacks. And so our defensive line, I think, is our strength. And I think that allows Elko to do a lot of different things with the way he runs defense, even though he's the head guy now. Obviously we have a DC, but I think his defensive mindset is going to be what we kind of go with.
Absolutely. I think I know where you're going with this one, but what do you think will be the biggest, or what position group will be the biggest weakness for A&M?
I still think it's offensive line.
Yep.
But I'm sorry, let me change that. I think linebacker depth.
Okay.
I think we have some great ones at the top, but we have a lot of unproven talent there. And I feel like that's been the case for us for a really long time. Now, the freshman, 21, had a phenomenal season, York, and you can tell no one deserves it more than him. He's a hard worker. He cares. All the things, the intangibles that he has as a young man, you want everybody on the roster to approach the game and life the way he does. But, it's a long season, like we said. And if some of these guys get banged up, who are our proven guys? I don't know. And so for me, I think linebacker is our weakness, O-line, and probably number 2 behind that. So those are the 2 things we really need to shore up.
Absolutely. Talking to Brandon Leone here on the Boss Firearms Hotline. Brandon, what group on offense do you think is going to be more productive, the wide receivers or the running backs? And I guess I'll give you my thoughts before you take over. I think it's going to be the running backs, just because you got the 3 guys who have been proven to work together well. And under Colin Klein, I'm sure there's going to be a lot more RPO option play. That'll be a lot of fun to watch. So me personally think, I'm thinking out loud here, but I think it's going to be the running back group, but a few transfers added to the wide receiver room. Jade Walker's still there. Moose Muhammad's still there. A lot of fun pieces. So what group do you think will be more productive?
I think the running backs. I agree with you. I think we have some top end talent at receiver, but you're installing a new system. Connor's coming back. You're still trying to figure out your offensive line, which you would think would hinder the running backs, but now you can use running backs out of the backfield as your run game to some extent. You extend your run game via quick game and passes and things like that. So Le'Veon Moss, Reuben Owens, those two guys to me have so much potential. And then again, we have some other guys behind them, but I think that Moss, I think he's a stud. I really do. I believe that consistently, if he can stay healthy, if he can do the things at the next level, at this level that make a running back great, pass protection, picking up all your cues in the backfield, making sure you can help protect the quarterback. If he can do that, it's easier to me as a running back. It might seem crazy, but I think it's easier to be productive at a running back in a new system than it is a receiver because they're trying to figure out timing. They're getting installed on a new playbook. Running back, just get the rock in my hands and let me get upfield. Give me some space. And so I think naturally it's going to be easier for them to succeed, at least early on. But again, it kind of goes back to that O-line. If your O-line struggling, then the receivers, quick game to the receivers, you can use them. So, but I agree with you, running backs. I'm excited to see 8, man. I really think he's going to have a heck of a season.
Yeah. What does you mentioned it earlier, what does the recent recruiting run Coach Elko has done, like you mentioned, kind of on the down low with all of the baseball attention paid to baseball, a lot of commits picking up in the 2025 class, the 26 class, now starting to get a few additions here and there. So what does that tell you about Mike Elko, his staff, and the vision that they're selling to these kids?
I think that you can see that whatever it is that they're selling is something that is providing value, right? Like they're showing value to these kids, which, listen, I will sell A&M like anybody on the planet. I wish I could sit in front of recruits and just tell them the way that this school has impacted me. But I think what it shows you is that he's not distracted. He's focused. And with all this craziness going on, like, everybody's lights are off at night. He's in front of his laptop watching film and recruiting, and him and his staff are getting it done. And so I think it's amazing because I bet you he's probably liked it. Like you said, I mean, honestly, I can't believe SEC Media Day is next week, right?
Is
it next week?
Yep, next week.
Yeah, dude, I mean, that usually it would feel like it's months away because, I don't know, maybe baseball didn't have as good of a season as they did this year or whatever, but the off season has seemed longer in the past. This year, it seems short. And I think Elko has probably loved that distraction because while everyone's running around talking about OU and Texas to the SEC and Schlossnagle, how dare he leave? He's just going to work and building a top 5 class and building a program that is something that we can be as proud of as the baseball team this past year. And so I also believe that, he has a ton of support behind him. And I mean, one of the things I can tell you is I was so proud of A&M fans over that run during the College World Series, man. Like, we showed out, which we always do. And I don't think that there's any fan base in the country that's more deserving or more excited, for a win in one of the big 3 sports. So I know Elko knows that because he's been here before. He's seen it. He saw us get high up to that point with the Orange Bowl win. And so I think he knows personally what's there. And so he probably has a little bit more conviction selling than normally because he knows the type of program that we are and the type of people that we have as fans.
What does a successful first season under Mike Elko look like? That could be either, do you have a record in mind? Is it, making a certain bowl game? Is it beating certain opponents on your schedule? What do you think that looks like? Or in your eyes, what is a successful first season under Mike Elko?
Man, that's a great question, Nick. It's hard for me to answer that because it sounds like we've been answering the same thing for 25 years. Get 9 wins, make it to a bowl game and get 9 wins. I just feel like we're past that. If you, say what you want to say about Schlossnagle, but the dude came here and in 3 years, he went to Omaha twice and played for the Natty in 3 years. And so I think it's a little bit more challenging probably in football than it is baseball. And I don't mean that to demean baseball. I just think, and SEC baseball is very tough. But for me, I think I really want to look at the SEC West. Here's a successful season to me for Mike Elko. Beat Texas, beat Notre Dame, don't lose to one of the Mississippi schools, win at Kyle Field, and try to have yourself in the conversation in late November. So yeah, I would say 9 wins should be the minimum. But if that dude can win 9 and go win a bowl game, if he can win 10 games after all the doom and gloom when Jimbo was gone and every single player transferred out, if we can still get to 10 wins in his first season, beat Texas, beat Notre Dame, don't lose to a Mississippi school, and do well in the SEC West, I think that that would be very impressive first season, and I'm excited for it.
Yeah, and you got to think about it this way too, Brandon. With the expanded playoffs, this is the first season with the 12 teams in. You got to think a 9-win SEC team is in the conversation to be in, the 10, 11, 12 spot. So, I mean, I'm there with you. If they're living in that range, they're definitely in the conversation to make the playoffs. Brandon, a few more questions before I let you go because I know you got to get out of here. Kind of overarching here, how do you think Texas and OU will fare in their first season in the SEC? Like you mentioned, it's a little different.
It's different. It is. I will say the unfortunate thing about Texas is, they do have an extremely talented roster right now. I believe they were kind of gifted as their schedule's not crazy. It's very favorable. But I do think that the week-to-week grind of the SEC is going to surprise them a little bit. They went into Alabama last year and beat the piss out of Bama. And, that was impressive. There's just no denying it. But, I think the thing about the SEC West is, like, you can be on a high and roll into Starkville and, they got NFL all over the place, NFL players all over the place, and you can lose. And so if they struggled, which they have minus last year for a decade in the Big 12, I think that this will be more challenging than they think. Not only just the talent on the rosters, but the environments in which you're playing in compared to the Big 12. It's just it really is. And every single coach, remove my opinion, every single coach that's been in the SEC for a long time or that left and came back, they all talk about the SEC grind. And so it'll be interesting to see how they navigate week to week, what it's like in the SEC. I think they'll do. I think, unfortunately, they're going to both do well. I really do. But I think over time, it's going to be a challenge for them long term. I do think Texas is built for a good run this year, though, which I hate. I hate that more than you know.
Absolutely. Last question here. Do you pay attention to SEC Media Days at all? Is there a storyline you'll be following? Or are you just more interested in hearing from Coach Elko and the players there representing A&M? Any interest there for you?
I used to, now with just work and, running the business up here and trying to grow it and, 3 kiddos, it's hard as you get older to focus on these things that you like to focus on. But I will tell you, the media is kind of who brings the storylines, right? Like I always listen to our guys. I always listen to Elko. I always listen to our players. I just love to see how they represent themselves, how they present Texas A&M to the world during those days. But ultimately, the storylines that come out end up being, the headliners from the media. And so you guys and what y'all do and what all your competitors and your colleagues in the industry say are kind of what catch my attention. We're such a short attention span culture. I just kind of follow Twitter. If I see something that some coach said that's crazy or some player is like A&M sucks, and then it's like, oh man, I can't wait to play them. So I just kind of pay attention to what pops up on the Twitter feed. But it's exciting. It always means that it's that next step closer to football season. So I can't believe we're here. Like I truly can't believe it's July 9th. Like I can't believe it's that fast. We're that close.
Yeah. Yes, sir. Well, hey, Brandon, thank you so much for joining me a few minutes out of your day. Really appreciate it. And we'll talk to you here soon.
Absolutely. Good job, Nick. Keep it up.
Thank
you. See
you
you soon.
Brandon Leone there on the Boss Firearms hotline. We'll hit a break on the other side. We'll check in with Luke. We'll check in with Carson, read some of your text messages and your chat messages and all that good stuff. Keep it right here. You're listening to TexAgs Radio presented by David Gardner's Jewelers. Welcome back in. TexAgs Radio presented by David Garner Jewelers here inside the Rollo Insurance Studio. Nick Savage filling in for David Nuno. Guest host the rest of this week. Again, Bronny will be in the host chair tomorrow. I'll be back Thursday. And then Friday, we'll have Luke Evangelos and Matthew Dawson for the greatest show of all time, I'm sure. But right now, we're giving away an Aggieland Express car wash. Your car wash tradition with the friendliest staff and personal touch. Aggieland's first green car wash. They recycle 100% of their water. 2 locations, original on William D. Fitch behind Shipley's in South College Station. A new location at 2528 Texas Avenue South in College Station across from the Planet Fitness. Both Aggieland car washes have all the services you want, varying wash options, free vacuums, and towels for your use. Unlimited monthly membership packages starting as low as $19.95 per month. The new location also offers a full-service wash, newest full-service wash in town. Choose the full-service option, and the Aggieland Express team will take care of cleaning, drying, vacuuming, Armor All interior, all under a completely covered area so that your car stays cool while they make it sparkle and shine for you. And a special deal for a limited time, they are inviting you to try the full service option for half price. It's normally $40, but you can get it today for $20 off if you tell them TexAgs sent you. So giveaway right now, call in 979-693-1150 to get that free car wash, pardon me. We'll go around the room here and check in with the people, Luke Evangelos and Carson. Carson, we'll start with you. You got any texts for us to break into? If not, I got some topics I'd like to get y'all's thoughts on.
We do. We just got one text in right now from Kendall saying, Brandon just said the SEC West will be tough this year. How many West and East teams will make the playoffs? I just wanted to say, with the new format now, since Oklahoma and Texas joined the league, the East and West formats.
Yeah, there's no more divisions.
Yeah, it's just now the two best teams in the SEC.
Yeah, absolutely. But, I mean, if we can still break that down if we want to take it there. How many West and East teams will make? Well, let's just say this. How many SEC teams will make the playoffs? I'm going to go 4 in this first year. And I know a lot of people have talked about, like, SEC fatigue and stuff. Like, if there's 5 or 6 SEC teams that have impressive records and they all have 9 wins or something, or a few of them have 9 wins, they're going to leave one of them out in favor of, say, a Big Ten team or something like that. So, Carson, I guess you give your take, and then we'll bring in Luke to see what he thinks about that.
I think this year it'll probably be 4. Like you were saying, the SEC fatigue. I don't think, with the new 12-team format, I don't think everyone's going to want to see potentially 6 to 7 teams make it. I don't think it'll be that much. So, I think 4 teams consisting of, like, Ole Miss, Georgia, obviously, Tennessee maybe, stuff like that.
I don't think it's out of the question to, come middle of the season and we're talking about, what'd you say, 7 or 8 teams, possibly half the league with a chance to make it into the playoff. I feel like that's, not out of the question. Luke, what do you think about this?
The way I see it, I think, so there's 8 spots up for grabs, right? There's 12 technically. 1 is going to that group of 5 team.
Correct.
1's going to ACC, Big 12, Big 10 conference winners. So there's 8 spots left. I think I'm going to lean towards 5 because as of right now, Texas, Alabama, Ole Miss, Georgia, all those teams are in play to win the SEC. Whoever doesn't, though, I think has a very solid shot at making an at-large bid. And then from there, I don't think you can see the committee leaving out like a 9-3 Tennessee or Texas A&M or Oklahoma. I think there's a lot of teams that are going to have 3 losses that will challenge maybe a 2-loss Big Ten team that didn't win their conference tournament, maybe a 2-loss ACC team. You're going to have a lot of serious discussions of what does the committee value most, and I'm going to lean towards saying 5 SEC teams will make it just because I don't think if A&M beats Texas, beats LSU, maybe loses to Mizzou and Notre Dame, that's still a lot of quality wins that teams in other conferences may not even get the chance to match. So I'm going to lean towards 5 just because you have to look at the strength of schedule and the quality of opponent that your team is going to play.
Side tangent here, and I want y'all's thoughts on this as well. I've expressed my disdain for the auto bid for the best group of 5 team. I think that's dumb because I can already see the scenario one day where, it's a undefeated Liberty gets in and A&M's on the outside looking in, by 1 spot or something. And we're all just going to be sitting here like, is Liberty really better than A&M or something like that. But any SEC team, I'd rather watch any SEC team that's, most likely going to beat an undefeated group of 5 team, that gets into the playoff because of an auto bid system. How do y'all feel about that?
I'm going to have to disagree with that just because you can't tell half of the country that their games don't matter at all. If you say there's no outlet for a group of 5 team to even make the playoffs, I think that would be truly the end of college football. There needs to be some kind of incentive for lesser programs. And I wouldn't even say that, sure, every year is different, but for the most part, group of 5 teams can compete with some of the best teams that don't make the playoffs. I think back to Western Michigan being a really solid team, making the Cotton Bowl and almost winning. You look at teams like Memphis that have done historically pretty well, Tulane beating USC in the Cotton Bowl. So there are avenues and there are prime examples in the past of group of 5 teams competing at the highest level. Now, being the 12 seed lines you up with the 5 seed, which could very well be a very highly rated team that just didn't win their conference. Like, let's say it's Alabama and Georgia dominating the SEC.
Yeah.
One of them has one loss and just doesn't win their conference tournament. Well, guess what? You're now the 5 seed, and I think those group of 5 teams are really going to struggle. But you have to give them a chance to even make noise and make an impact in the college football playoff. So I think they need to be in there. This year, there's parity everywhere in college football. Teams like Tulane and Liberty are going to be as good as ever, and I'm actually pretty excited for teams like that. I mean, even Boise State, they're loaded with transfers. Teams like that deserve a chance to be in the playoffs, and if it means one less interesting game or one game that people don't want to watch, I'm totally fine with that because those teams deserve a spot in it.
Carson, your take?
I mean, there's arguments for each side. If you look back, before Cincinnati took the jump to the Big 12, they made the playoffs. No one expected that. And the game
they got
against
steamrolled.
Yeah, the game against Alabama, it wasn't the best game to watch. And then you look at the argument against it. Look at what Liberty did this past year. Won their conference.
There you go.
Play against Oregon, an Oregon team that had a lot of guys sit out because it was a meaningless bowl game to them, and they steamrolled them.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, there's arguments for and against. I'm kind of with Luke. If you just say the group of 5, you're saying their games don't matter, then there's really nothing for them to play for. I think you should still let them in, though. I think it all depends on matchups. Like you were saying, if, say, the 5 seed were to be Alabama playing Tulane or what is it?
Georgia,
something like that. It wouldn't be the best matchup to watch.
I just think, and I do tend to agree with y'all there, but I think that's unfortunately the way college football is heading with super conferences and all that stuff. We don't need to dive into that, but I think there is a world where we're going to see one day where those group of 5 teams are in a different league. They are playing for something different when it's just the SEC and the Big Ten, with 20 teams in each conference. Those are the teams that get picked for the college football playoff. I think that's the direction it will eventually go in, but we'll see. We're going to hit a break here. On the other side, we'll talk to SEC Unfiltered's Chris Phillips, We'll get his thoughts on SEC Media Days, a little bit of college baseball talk and all that good stuff. Keep it right here. You're listening to TexAgs Radio, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers. Welcome back in. TexAgs Radio presented by David Garner's Jewelers. We're here inside the Rollo Insurance Studio, and we're going to go out to the Boss Firearms Hotline. Welcome in a good friend of the program, Chris Phillips of SEC Unfiltered. Chris, what's up, man? How are you?
What's going on, man? I appreciate you having me on. It's a pleasure to chat with you guys once again. And football time is here, man. We got the July 4th holiday. I feel like a lot of us have that July 4th glow from a beach trip or vacation or whatever it might be, but really excited to get to Dallas next week. And it'll be my first trip ever to the state of Texas. So very pumped, and I can't think of a better way to break it in than that.
Well, awesome, man. We'll be up there as well. I'm sure we'll get you back on the show next week. So, but I know you want to talk football, but I'm going to rope you back into a little baseball here real quick. I know you're up in Omaha. Got to hang out with Bronny, who was on the show earlier today. Just real quickly, because it's fun to get everyone's takes on this. What were your thoughts on Schloss's departure to Texas on the outside looking in? Like, what's your takeaway from that whole crazy situation?
Yeah, that was a wild couple weeks. I would have never imagined being there in Omaha, Nebraska, and watching the Aggies go on their path to the College World Series finals, that the news cycle after would be even crazier than what we were witnessing in Omaha with Schlossnagle obviously departing. I thought it was, and I've said this many times, I thought it was a slimy move. I thought it was a backstabbing kind of move. I just thought, we don't have to go on the details. You guys obviously know we've hashed it and rehashed it over and over, but I just thought it was, I wasn't a fan of the move. We'll put it that way. I felt for Texas A&M. I felt for the 12th man, but everything happens for a reason. And I think Michael Earley taking over, I think they made that move obviously for a lot of reasons you guys have talked about, but you see the player support, Jace Lavalette, Gavin Grahovic coming back. I think for those reasons and many more, it was a great move. And so, I mean, listen, Michael Earley's got all the resources he needs. And in baseball, the coach is really, really important, Nick. Don't get me wrong, but I think the most coaches that are most successful are like guys that let them go play. Just let guys go play. Don't overthink things. Don't try to be too in control. And I think Michael Earley, as long as he can recruit, he can sell Texas A&M, and again, he's already done a good job of that. I think he's going to have a lot of success because A&M is a place with the way they're investing in the resources there, the facilities. It's going to sell itself. It's a great program. Just went to the College World Series finals. I think this is a program on solid footing. So the Schlossnagle news cycle was unlike anything we've ever seen. I can't wait to watch Texas A&M and Texas on the diamond next year. But it'll be interesting to see who wins that sort of fallout, if you will. Like who comes out better. I think A&M's still in a really, really good spot. I like the hiring of Michael Earley.
Absolutely. Isn't it crazy how, all the hype was for the A&M Texas football game, but now it's almost like the baseball series has been elevated to that level as well. But let's flip our attention to some football because, again, you mentioned SEC Media Days coming up. And y'all have been releasing on SEC Unfiltered. It's list week, right? So that's a lot of fun. You dropped your first one yesterday, and it was your SEC power rankings. And me and Bronny were talking about this earlier. Little interesting, a few of those spots. Number one, obviously Georgia. I think everyone will agree with that. Number two, Ole Miss. That caught my attention. Texas at 3. I'll jump to number 9, where you have the Aggies. So just kind of run us through your list, some of the rankings, your thought process behind that.
And listen, Nick, I'll say this to all Aggies out there. I'm admittedly a little bit more conservative than some others on Texas A&M, not because of what I feel like they can't be, right? I mean, the over-under win total in Vegas is 8.5 for a reason. This is a team with a lot of talent. I think Connor Wegman, we're dropping our quarterback rankings later today, and I think Connor Wegman's a guy that if you told me he was going to be healthy start to finish, if you guaranteed that, I tell you, he's probably a top 5 quarterback in the league. Like he's got that kind of potential. He's got that kind of talent. It's just injuries that have held him back. You got Torian York on the defensive side. I mean, I think both lines of scrimmage are going to be solid. I think even though you lost some guys like Anaya Smith, Evan Stewart, Walter Nolan on defense, you still have playmakers. Like this is not your typical year one for Mike Elko. And if you can kick the door down in week 1 and beat Notre Dame, and I think that could set you up for a 9-win season, maybe potentially competing for a college ball playoff. But I am in a little bit of show me mode with Texas A&M. I'm like many others where I've been burnt before. And I don't think that's a bad place to be. I look at the attendees they have for SEC Media Days, and I think obviously they're Aggie stars, but it feels a lot more like these are lunch pail guys, and it's much more workmanlike than maybe some of the stuff we saw under Jimbo Fisher with the sunglasses at Media Days. And I look back and I'm like, we probably should have known it was off the rails at that point because it was all this glitz and this glamour. And I've heard Billy talk about this before, that Texas A&M is at their best when they're going out there to prove something and punch you in the face. Like that's when Texas A&M, when they've got that lunch pail workmanlike mentality. And I think Mike Elko is going to bring that back. But I've got them at 9th right now. Again, I just want to see them prove it. You mentioned Ole Miss at number 2. Georgia clear-cut number 1.
That one caught my attention.
Yeah, Ole Miss at number 2. Listen, I just look at the roster, man. In Texas at number 3, we're splitting hairs here. But, I think with Texas, the one thing that does jump out to me, I think they're going to be very good. I think the roster is very good. I like Quinn Ewers a lot. They return all 5 offensive linemen. They crushed it in the portal, adding guys from Alabama, Isaiah Bond, Amari Niblack, guy from UTEP. They added others as well. Defensively, they got to replace some key guys in the middle of that defense, that defensive front specifically. Secondary is a question. But again, they're as talented as anybody. I wouldn't call them saying lock for the college football playoff. We never know, but you feel pretty confidently they'll be there. But I look at last year, after Texas beats Alabama, they fall to Oklahoma. They kind of sleepwalk through games against Wyoming and Iowa State and Kansas State. And you just know in the SEC you can't do that. So I'm not necessarily worried that Texas and Oklahoma are going to get massively humbled or anything, or they're not ready for the SEC grind. I think that's going to be a talking point in Dallas next week. It's probably going to get overused and are you ready for the week in, week out grind of things? But you and I both know that you cannot sleepwalk against anybody. You can't go in there and think you're going to roll your helmet out there and get the victory against anyone, or you're going to get beat. And I just look at Ole Miss's roster, man, and what they added. They added essentially an all-star team to a team that already won 11 games last year. So, listen, I don't know if they're going to beat Georgia, but I don't know if they're going to get beat by anybody else. I just think Ole Miss, what they did upgrading on the line of scrimmage, and Lane Kiffin mentioned that they had to get more physical there after they got boat raced by Georgia and Athens last year. The pieces they added to an already explosive offense. I think running back, a little bit of a question, but I like Ulysses Bentley there. And the other guys they added, the Miami transfer, they're loaded there as well. Jackson Dart, I think, is one of the best quarterbacks in the league. And then again, defensively, it's hard to find holes in that Ole Miss team. So I know that Ole Miss, from a standpoint of, can they go out and win the big game? I think that's going to be the big question. It seems like Lane Kiffin, he's not able to win that game. But I just look at the roster, man, and I'm like, it should be Ole Miss up there at number 2. And I'm buying the Ole Miss hype a little bit. So I put the Rebels in that number 2 spot.
Absolutely. Talking to Chris Phillips here of SEC Unfiltered on the Boss Firearms Hotline. Chris, how much do you think the SEC will benefit from the expanded playoffs? We were just talking about this in the last segment. We're thinking, 4 to maybe even 5 teams in the playoff. We'll see. But how much do you think that will benefit the Southeastern Conference?
Yeah, Nick, I think they benefit tremendously. I think what's so exciting too, and I know there's a divide of the debate of, is it good for the sport? Does it take away from the regular season, if you will? I look at it this way, Nick. Texas A&M is going to be a big game no matter what. Yeah. I think if you really love college football, and people that say that the games aren't going to matter, I'm like, they're not going to matter to who? Because I come from a place where both teams could be 0-11 going in the rivalry game, and that's still going to be the biggest game of the year. You know what I mean? So, I think that's kind of exaggerated a little bit. But you mentioned, I think, as you expand the playoff, more and more SEC teams are going to get in. And what's so exciting, Nick, is I think in years past, teams like Tennessee, LSU, Missouri, maybe even Oklahoma, maybe even Texas A&M, teams we were talking about is, they could have a nice 8 or 9 win year. Maybe things break right and they hit that 10-win mark. And that's where we would stop the conversation. Mm-hmm. Now we get to talk about, hey, things break right. They might go 9-3. They might make the college football playoff. So it adds this other level of excitement for us, obviously, talking about it. And again, from the standpoint of teams getting into the college football playoff, it absolutely helps the SEC because, I think you look realistically, there's going to be some, even though we've expanded to 12, when it comes to that 12 spot, there's going to be some very hard conversations to have because if you have, let's say, I'm not saying it's going to happen, but what if Florida went 8-4 or 9-3? Are we really going to look at their schedule and say that a Big Ten team that went 10-2 or an ACC team that went 10-2, those two things are equal? So there's going to be some very interesting conversations, even when it comes to that number 12 team or what have you. But I think it certainly helps the SEC because it's more so your middle tier that are reaching for the upper tier. We know the Georgias, the Texases, the Alabamas feel pretty good. They're going to be in the playoff more often than not, but it's those other teams like Tennessee, Mizzou, LSU, and A&M down the road. All of a sudden, I think it gives them something new to shoot for.
Absolutely. Talking to Chris Phillips of SEC Unfiltered here. You mentioned earlier, next week is SEC Media Days. We'll all be down there. Believe on Tuesday, it's Kirby Smart, Eli Drinkwitz, believe Sam Pittman and Tennessee. Oklahoma and Tennessee is who it is on Tuesday. So it'll be a fun week. What storylines will you be following, or what do you think will come out of SEC Media Days this year?
Yeah, Nick, I mean, I think there's a few that are very low-hanging fruit. Hearing Greg Sankey talk about the future of college football, it does seem like every year there's some sort of new nugget or some sort of, tidbit that drops about the future of the sport, right? Everybody wants to hear Sankey talk about a 9-game conference schedule, or are we going to have more expansion, or what does the future of football look like outside of the SEC? So I'll be curious just to hear if anything comes from him. Again, Texas and Oklahoma is the low-hanging fruit, right? They're going to get the question all week long, or are you ready for the SEC grind? Do you think you're set up, you're in a position to where you're ready to come in and not just compete, but win and win at a high level? Because these are two proud programs that they're not going to want to take a backseat to anybody. Outside of that, Nick, I think there are a lot of really interesting storylines. You think of the first-time coaches that are going to be there. Obviously, Kalen DeBoer, which it's interesting. We're not used to Alabama kind of being – I'm not saying they're a footnote, but normally Bama is like the main talking point, and I don't feel that way this year. So how does Kalen DeBoer attack that? Does he make it a point to steal the room and steal the show? Does he make it a point to kind of stay in the background and let Alabama do their talking on the field this year? Obviously, Mike Elko, a new coach. I'm excited to hear him talk about, obviously, things he's already mentioned, the new culture at Texas A&M, their goals, what they're looking to achieve. I think, again, it's going to be a very workmanlike approach from him. I don't expect Mike Elko to steal headlines or be the flashy guy. I think he's a very much bring your lunch bill, which I think is what Texas A&M needs. Also the coaches, and then Jeff Lebby, by the way, at Mississippi State. I'm really excited to hear him talk about taking on that challenge in Starkville. And then you got coaches on the hot seat, man, and Sam Pittman and Billy Napier, and I'm just kind of interesting to hear. I think they're going to get some really difficult questions, and I think they're going to use that as an opportunity, obviously, to sell their program and sell what they're doing and sell what they're doing in recruiting. And while everybody in the room obviously knows what they need to do to, extend their stays, if you will. And then obviously hearing from the players is awesome. And I'll be honest with you, Nick, one of my favorite parts of the week, and probably my favorite part, is linking up with guys like you and folks with TexAgs and all the other most talented creators in the space, and getting to talk college football with like-minded individuals. Man, it's a blast. So it's it's talking season, as the HBC used to say, and but it's certainly one of our favorite times of the year.
Absolutely. Well, Chris, we'll catch up with you in Dallas. Show you how we do it down here in Texas, right? Next week. We're looking forward to it,
man. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I'm excited.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us. That's Chris Phillips of SEC Unfiltered. Check him out on Twitter and on YouTube and all that good stuff. We'll hit a quick break. Really short segment on the other side. You're listening to TexAgs Radio, presented by David Garner's Jewelers. Welcome back in TexAgs Radio. Really short segment here. We'll set the table for the 10 o'clock hour. Right off the top, Tom Hart of the SEC Network will join us. Talk SEC football, SEC Media Days, all that fun stuff. Then we're going to hear from Lucci from his segment yesterday on TexAgs Radio. In case you missed it, he and David had a good conversation about expectations for Aggie football this coming season. So we'll listen into that. And then we'll send you out of here for the rest of your Tuesday. Don't go anywhere. This is TexAgs Radio presented by David Garner's Jewelers. We haven't even started the segment, and Mr. Hart's already laughing at me. Welcome in TexAgs Radio, presented by David Gardner Schulers. We're inside the Rollo Insurance Studio, 10 o'clock hour kicking off here before we get you to the Louis Bellina show at 11 o'clock. As I mentioned, Tom Hart, the man, SEC Network play-by-play man, is joining us on the hotline. I know I didn't text you or anything. I figured I'd just surprise you. I'm filling in for David today.
This was not laughing at. This was a fatherly smile of pride. I'm proud of you, the ascension to the big chair. Does David know who Wally Pipp is? Because he may not get the job back after you've slid over to take over for how long? Just the day? What are we doing? The week? What's the story?
I got today and Thursday. Bronny's in the chair tomorrow, and a couple of our part-timers are getting the chair on Friday for the first time. So I don't mind hosting. I as you know, want to do what you do for a living, Tom. I want to be a play-by-play guy. I don't feel like I'm the greatest radio host, but I do enjoy it because I get to talk to guys like you, and we get to talk about some fun stuff.
What is the biggest challenge for hosting that makes you uncomfortable versus the being in the flow calling a game?
I feel like nobody cares what I have to say. That's how I truly feel. I don't know why anyone should listen to anything I say versus, I can call a game and, tell you what's happening. But when it comes to, quarterbacks in the SEC, like, I'm a scrawny little dude. Like, why does anyone care what I have to say?
Now, listen, I will say that answer, while being humorous, would allow me to pontificate on the fact that will make you a better play-by-play announcer. And there are all types out there, and there are people have their favorites and announcers that they like and dislike. But to me, the best and the one that's the best play-by-play announcers out there are the ones that put the game first and not themselves first. And, first you put the game, and then you put your partners, and then maybe down the road you could interject a little bit of yourself. But yeah, if you think no one cares what I have to say, while that sounds a little bit, I don't know, whatever, less confident than you might want, the bottom line is the game should come first when you're calling a game. Mm-hmm. And I get annoyed personally. It's not my style. That doesn't mean it's wrong, but I get annoyed when I watch games and a play-by-play guy is talking about like he was the quarterback, like he was Tony Romo.
Yeah.
Right? Like he was a quarterback for the Cowboys, or like he won an SEC title. No. If we want to hear from an expert, you allow the guy next to you, the analyst, to be the expert. Just give me the time and score, down and distance. And if you can work in a little bit of entertainment, that's fine. But make sure you're, getting those other guys involved. I think it's a good attitude to have.
Yeah. Tom, I could sit here and ask you play-by-play questions all day because that's what I want to do. But we got, SEC media days to talk about. We got or not just Aggie football, but SEC football in general coming up. So first question for you, are you going to be in Dallas? I know you didn't make it to Nashville last year. Will you be in Dallas this year?
It was in Nashville last year?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so I haven't been. So this will be 2 straight years I haven't gone. No, I don't have any plans to make it to Dallas. I don't know. I know I have a feel what I'll be missing out on. And quite frankly, like I love the pomp and circumstance, and I love the hype machine. And I think having Oklahoma and Texas there would be interesting. And I'm sure Greg Sankey is going to say some very interesting things. And I'm curious what that will be. But mostly, an exercise in filling time, right? I mean, very little that we learn in July, it really still applies come, say, October 1st. So, I'm going to be, I think I might be at the beach, actually. I haven't finalized my plans yet, but no, I'm not going to be there in a working capacity, and I won't be there in a shaking hands or bro hugging capacity either.
I gotcha. That's what I'll be doing. Bro hugging central, trying to make connections and whatnot. So, well, that's interesting to know, but we'll you mentioned Greg Sankey, and he might say some interesting things. Some of the things that have, at least caught my attention that might come out. Do you think we'll hear something about maybe a change in the SEC conference scheduling model? Do you think that might change in the near future, or, there's tidbits every year, I feel like, that come out of SEC Media Day. So might that be one of them?
Yeah, I think that's certainly possible. As you look at the schedule this year, it can be overwhelming how good the SEC schedule is week in and week out. However, with a couple of bye weeks, it's also easy to look at the schedule critically and say, man, this could be so much better, right? I mean, why is Missouri playing UMass? Why is Georgia, who does Georgia have second to last week? It might be UMass also. They have some terrible opponent second to last week. Why can't we fill in some of those holes and make the schedule even better by adding a conference game? So I think that's the first thing to ask. That being said, that is not going to happen. Sorry about that. That is not going to happen unless the TV partner pays for it. So that's number one, that's first and foremost. To me, what's most interesting is his answer, which will be most powerful, is something that we discussed with him on the air during the SEC baseball tournament. And I would hope that this will be on someone's question list is how are these schools going to pay for the $22 million, whatever it turns out to be from the House case, and the future of litigation, and where's this money going to come from? And then the next question is, what is the conference's plan to either further revenue or protect sports that could be vulnerable? Because it's easy to see that the easiest way for an athletic department to find that money is to cut 2 sports, at least 2. And so where does the SEC stand on that? And where does he stand in terms of trying to protect some of these schools? Now, you won't hear from many athletic directors during media days. Those are the ones who ultimately need to answer that question. But as an overseer of the conference, what is he doing to protect, the softball teams or the tennis teams or swimming or gymnastics that could be vulnerable as non-revenue sports, the ones that don't pay for themselves and that the schools could save money by getting rid of?
Absolutely. Talking to Tom Hart here on the Boss Firearms Hotline. Tom, let's talk a little bit about actual on-the-field play. How much do you think the SEC will benefit from an expanded playoff? We were talking about that earlier. They could possibly get in 4, maybe even 5 SEC teams into the playoffs if things shake out right. So how much is the SEC going to benefit from that?
Hugely. A huge benefit for the league. I'm going to pull up Georgia's schedule real quick because I mentioned them a second ago, and I'm really curious who they have that second to last weekend. But Georgia is a team that missed out on the playoff last year, right? And yeah, they have UMass. They close with UMass and Georgia Tech, and the rest of their schedule is absolutely loaded. And the reason I bring them up, I mean, not even including Clemson, but within the league, Alabama and Texas and Florida, which is always a battle, Ole Miss and Tennessee. Those are all losable games for a Georgia program that will be a top 5 program, if not number 1 with a bullet going into the season. Could they lose 3 games and get into a 12-team playoff? Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, you won't be able to say that about a Big 12 team. You can only say that about an SEC team and certain Big 10 teams based on their schedules. And obviously it depends on how competitive they are in those losses, what they do with the rest of their schedule, how dominant they are outside of whatever losses they could incur. Alabama could be the same way. Missouri and Ole Miss are teams that are prime for making the playoff. Like they're going to be top 10 programs coming into the season. Missouri's got a very favorable schedule. They've got to take advantage of it. Ole Miss has probably as talented a team as they've had since Hugh Freeze brought in the number 1 recruiting class in the country, and still back then they're way behind the rest of the league. So if you don't take advantage of those opportunities now, when you're at the apex, for both Missouri and Ole Miss, and it's a 12-team playoff, then you've wasted an opportunity. And I think that makes these seasons huge for both of these programs. So yeah, we'll see how it all plays out. We don't know exactly what the committee is going to do and what it's going to look like. And we don't know how the pressure of being involved in November is going to impact some of these programs. Mm-hmm. And we don't know how they're going to be judged. But I think it's a huge benefit to the league as a whole.
How do you think this year's quarterback class in the SEC is going to be perceived? Is it stronger than years past? Is it kind of average. You got Jackson Darr, Jalen Milroe, pardon me, Connor Wegman. Just what do you think of the group as a whole?
Yes, I think it's going to be a great group. And you mentioned those names, and then probably the next level, like Brady Cook had an amazing season last year. Kentucky's bringing in a guy with an opportunity to make huge headlines. And then Arkansas, Taylor Green as a big quarterback kind of reminds me a little bit of KJ Jefferson, but also similar to KJ in that program went as he went. Like Taylor Green has an opportunity to really be an impactful quarterback. And I think to answer your question, it's not just the elite quarterbacks that we know and have high expectations of. It's these other guys that are coming in with an opportunity to make some noise and to be impactful quarterbacks. I'm not sure exactly what to think of Blake Shapen at Mississippi State. His Baylor numbers are, kind of hit or miss, but he's going to have the chance to put up numbers. He's going to have the opportunity to be a headlining quarterback if things go well for that program. And running that offense, I think he's a good fit for it. So to answer your question, it's not just, the top 3 or 4 quarterbacks in the league. It's those middle tier guys and guys on bottom level programs that could also add to the, add to the spiciness of it all. By the way, why is Connor not going to media days? How do you have a quarterback of that level and with a program that's so important and with experience under his belt and not take him to Dallas?
Yeah, I was a little surprised to see that too, but I mean, Torian York, Trey Zune, those are the 2 captains going into this year. So it was, obvious that they were going to go. Shamar Turner, maybe the thinking is, hey, the strength of our team is that defensive line, so let's bring someone to represent him. But I'm not exactly sure why that is, but I'm excited to hear from the 3 that are coming.
I think A&M, Vandy, and I think there's only one other program that's not bringing a quarterback. I could be mistaken, but in this day and age, I'm not being hypercritical, but in this day and age, the quarterback is the star of the program, and he's the one that sells tickets, and he's the one that drives interest, and he's the one that people want to hear from. And other guys, other positions can certainly be entertaining, and they can certainly be just as insightful as a quarterback. But more often than not, from a leadership position, that's a guy who can speak well about the program, and that's a guy who can represent the program. And you kind of get a feel for – I've seen it on both ends. You get a feel for where the program is by the confidence with which the quarterback carries himself. I've seen guys go into media days and not carry themselves with a lot of confidence. And I've seen what happens after that. To that you kind of look at it and go, okay, I know it's only talking season, but I was expecting more leadership from that guy.
Yeah.
And usually that's representative of their personality.
Absolutely. Talking to Tom Hart here on the Boss Firearms Hotline. Tom, I asked Bronny this a little bit earlier, and I love your take on it. What do you think will be the most noticeable difference on the field from, Mike Elko's staff to Jimbo Fisher's staff from the seasons past? What do you think is going to be the biggest difference for someone, like me who doesn't necessarily understand the X's and O's, but I'll notice this?
Yeah, I'll give you 2 answers. One is macro, one is micro. And we discussed this as a broadcast crew ad nauseum with Jimbo, to the point where it probably got old. But from the micro, it's the very old school. The new school quarterback play is to be able to move the platform, to change your arm angle, to be able to get passes away. But, Patrick Mahomes is the ultimate. Aaron Rodgers is another example of that. Like, you don't have to be Peyton Manning in the pocket and hold the ball up high and be a statue. In fact, you need to be able to move. RPO game really brought that to the forefront from the quarterback position. The way Jimbo has always taught his quarterback was to, basically keep the ball on your shoulder, protect the ball, and then so I think that's probably one thing you'll see right off the bat. And I'm just guessing. I didn't go to any spring practices. I didn't see the quarterback play, but that is, I think, a safe assumption that is one on the field difference you're going to see change. And then the other one, this is way more macro, and I don't know exactly how, you'll see it take hold on the field of play. But I think the one word I would use is unity. I think Mike Elko is going to bring great unity to the program, both sides of the ball, within the coaching staff. I didn't see a whole lot of unity from that program over the last couple of years. Fair or not, and I think that's representative in kind of how things played out when things were disappointing. You show your true nature when things aren't going well, and things weren't going well, and those fractures showed up in a lot of different ways with the program the last couple of years.
Mm-hmm. And Richard Zane reliably texts in and lets me know the schools that aren't bringing quarterbacks: Kentucky, South Carolina, and he says Dottie is listed as an athlete by the SEC, but he'll likely play quarterback. Yeah. Tennessee, A&M, and Vanderbilt.
Yeah, Dottie's more of a he's been there forever kind of guy. I don't, and if he does play quarterback, he's going to play some. Mm-hmm. They like the rising sophomore that they've had there. So yeah, more than I thought. I'm a little bit surprised by Kentucky too, but it is what it is. Every school trust me, they put a lot of thought in this, and there's reasons behind who they bring. It's not just pulling names out of a hat or hey, who's available second week of July? Anybody want to go to Dallas?
Yeah,
they plan a lot more than that.
Exactly. Talking to Tom Hart here on the Boss Firearms Hotline. Tom, what do you think a successful first season under Mike Elko will be? And it doesn't have to be record. Is it making a certain level of bowl game, I should say? Is it winning, these couple games on your schedule? What do you think that will look like?
Well, let me hit the ball back over the net and ask you, what would be disappointing? Where is the floor for year number one? And then I'll have a better feel for
I would
the
say,
other side of the coin.
I would say, something around 6-6 maybe, and you drop the Notre Dame and Texas game. I think this is me personally speaking. I'm not speaking for the entire fan base, but I say if they go 6-6 and they win the Texas game, I'm pretty satisfied with that. But I don't know if that's the case for everybody. So I would say around the 6-6 or south would probably be a little disappointing year one.
So I think those are. I think that's a fair. Let me try to phrase this properly. I'm not saying anybody should be thrilled with that, but I think 6-6 with a win over Texas is perfectly fine to start this campaign. I think 8 wins is certainly possible. The challenge in reflecting on the season at the end of the year or judging it once we get to bowl season and quantifying it by, what bowl did we end up in? Which I think is normally fair, right? That's a normally very fair progress for those who don't make a 14 playoff to say, hey, listen, we made a New Year's Six bowl, or we played in this bowl game in our backyard and we played well and we sold it out and everyone was excited. We don't really know what the characters of these bowls are going to be going forward. Mm-hmm. With so many teams in the playoff, we don't know what used to be a very, positive accomplishment, either based on bowl prestige, bowl location, or opponent. We don't know what those opponents are going to look like either. I mean, we know what it looks like on paper, but I think once we get in and get a year under our belt, then we go, okay, well, the Gator Bowl used to be this, now it's this. The Texas Bowl used to be this, now it's this. For better or for worse, and I think that could all change and be a positive. I think what you're looking for in year number one is a winning record, a major win, at least one major win. Notre Dame. I know Notre Dame doesn't carry as much weight as Texas, obviously to the fans, and Texas can carry more weight because that could be a spoiling their season or spoiling their seeding kind of win, which certainly has incredible value when it comes to a rivalry. But you have to have one of those big time wins where you look back and go, man, that was a great day for the program. And we were able to take advantage of that momentum from either a recruiting standpoint or, which is always related these days, from a fundraising standpoint. How much more money are you going to get to fill the coffers if you beat Texas?
Yeah.
Right. how many people are going to be excited and say, where do I send a check? Let's go right now. I'll help you shore up this unit or that unit or these positions. So I think, I don't know if that's realistic. Obviously, anything can happen in that rivalry, but to have one of those big time quality wins under the belt and a winning record would be a great start.
Absolutely. Tom, thank you for the career advice. I always appreciate that. Thanks for joining us. And I guess we'll catch up with you in a couple weeks after SEC Media Day. So enjoy your vacation.
All right. Sounds good. And congratulations on the ascension. I'm a fan of wearing the hat on the show. Just be you.
Yeah.
Just like whatever role you're in, host, play-by-play. Don't try to be somebody else. Just be you. So, Nick, you've won on that regard so far.
Appreciate it, Tom. Thank you. That's Tom Hart of the SEC Network on Zoom. On the other side, we'll catch up. I guess we'll replay Billy Lucci's hit from yesterday in case you missed it. And you had a good conversation with David about, what A&M's expectations are coming into the 2024 season. So we'll hear that and more on the other side. You're listening to TexAgs Radio, presented by David Garner's Jewelers. TexAgs Radio presented by David Gardner's Jewelers. We're here inside the Rollo Insurance Studio. Nick Savage filling in for David Nuno. Again, Nuno's out the rest of the week. Bronny will be in the host chair tomorrow. I'll be back on Thursday. And then Luke Evangelist and Matthew Dawson will have their first show together hosting. So I'm honestly looking forward to that because Matthew Dawson will be breaking down Western Michigan's backup offensive line. So be sure to stay tuned for that. Just kidding. He's just, you know how he is. He's super.
And Luke Evangelist will be the comedic relief.
Or Flop Central.
Yes.
Either or.
That's probably way more likely.
Yeah, 100%. Right now, we're going to hear from Lucci yesterday. He joined TexAgs Radio with David Nuno. I can't go a day without giving y'all a little David and Billy. So, again, they had a really good conversation, I think, about, expectations for Aggie football coming into the 2024 season. We'll take it in parts. We'll hear the first part in this segment, second part in the 10:35 segment. So here's David and Billy from yesterday.
With that, Billy Lucci is in studio. Billy, I haven't heard Josh Pate's. He tweeted out that he thinks A&M is going to be a top 10 program over the next 3 years. I haven't heard. The chair's broken.
Sorry.
Hey, Billy.
David, what's up?
But I guess my response to that is why wouldn't they be? If they have the right guy, which we feel that they do, then yes, they will be exactly that.
He said over the next 3 years?
Yes.
Cup's messed up.
Is that water or coffee?
That was water.
Okay.
Over the next 3 years, A&M top 10. Yeah, I mean, I don't think that's outlandish. You look at the team this year, and on the high end, they could be that. On the high end, I mean, I think there's quite a range for this team. In the first year under new head coach, they've got some questions on offense. In terms of just personnel, I think, the O-line has to be light years better. We're not going to know it till we see it. I've been quite encouraged from what I saw this spring, what I'm hearing about the new coach in Cushing and what he's asking them to do, what I've seen from a Colin Klein offense in terms of what they can do with the ground game. I think all those things can combine to make an offensive line better, as can experience. As can bringing back the right people, and look, I'll be honest with you, I thought the whole Bryce Foster thing was problematic for them last year, and I'm not talking about Bryce not performing. I'm talking about Bryce doing track, coming in late, pushing out guys that had been practicing there the whole time, continuity's sake. I think that was problematic. It was just the way it was, and so there's a lot of reasons I would think that the O-line could be better this year and should be.
Right.
The question is how much. So we're not going to know that. So, and then again, you need guys to really step up at receiver, and you're asking guys, all of them, to play better. You're going to need them to play better than they ever have. At Noah, Moose, Jade, they're going to all three have to have better seasons than they've ever put together. That's putting it as simply as I can. Right? They're in order for this offense to be good, we're going to have to look up and go, okay, that was Moose's best year, that was Noah's best year, and that was Jade's.
All three. Yeah.
And that's not saying they have to all three be first-team All-SEC or All-Americans or first-round picks. I'm just saying that because Noah hasn't really had a full year. Jade kind of came on for like a half a year once he kind of started playing more. And then Moose has had exceptional games. So all three of those guys, I think if you looked up and go, okay, they all had their best year, then I think this offense could surprise. But that's why there's such range, I think, with this football team this year. But top 10 over the next 3 years, yeah, I could absolutely see that. You look at how Elko's recruiting. You look at what he did in the portal. I think the quarterback position, whether it's Connor Wigman for another couple of years, whether it's let's say a Marcel Reed who's on Longstreet after that maybe by year 3 that's him. Who knows how it's going to go? But you like what they have there in terms of when you're trying to project out the next 3 years, right? I believe in the defense under Elko, always, forever. And then I think, just the way they're recruiting and the way they went about the portal this year is really impressive. So that combination, along with what they're affording Elko and his staff in terms of facilities and, we've talked about the game day environment being unmatched. if they're coached right, and it's not easy to do. Good coaches have failed, but I think you've got a good coach, a really good coach that's a really good fit here at A&M, and I think the contrast of kind of what he's bringing to the table in terms of the discipline and the organization and structure and things like that, I think you're going to see that in the form of wins. And we've talked about this a lot. With the exception of 5 and 7, and even last year, or were they 7 and 5? Even last year, they went through what? They played 4 quarterbacks, and Ole Miss was that close. Bama was that close. Was there another one?
Tennessee was close.
Tennessee was that close. Like at 10 wins is not, and that's kind of where you're 10 and 2. You're kind of on the cusp of that top 10. If you're 10 and 2 in the SEC, you're right there, usually in there. So with the exception of 5 and 7, you look at these seasons, you go, the difference is not much. It's a fourth quarter. It's a bad call against LSU or a fourth down stop. It's a first and goal you couldn't convert at Ole Miss. The margins are very small in this league, and that's what I always talk about, to our friends from the Big 12. It's like there's a lot of close losses for everybody. It's not an A&M thing. So it's the teams that can be good enough to overcome, like it's a slightly off day, but you can still win because your system works on Saturdays, your preparation's better than a lot of the teams you're playing, and you've got superior players. In A&M's case, a lot of times all they had was the superior talent. Those other things were lacking, and they never quite developed a killer instinct, a finishing instinct. I think we've watched Ole Miss develop that over the last couple of years. A&M, it looked like developed that up till 2020, and then it got away from them, And to be honest, a lot of credit, he never gets credit for it, but I thought Kellen Mond, for the same thing that drove people crazy about him sometimes on the boards and listeners, that kind of calm and that kind of didn't show a lot of emotion.
Yeah.
Countenance always kind of stayed the same. Maybe that's what they needed under Jimbo because things were so chaotic and erratic, and they needed someone that just kind of – and they won with that, and they won methodically. Now, hopefully this team can do it more explosively and maybe at a higher tempo, but they can do it with defense and a running game this year, I believe. Because if Connor Wigman has a running game and a good defense, he's going to make those receivers better. He's going to find the open guys. He's going to get rid of the ball quickly, and he's going to extend plays. That's when this team can hit its ceiling.
Every set of season has its own issues, right? But if you were to point out 2, 3, 4 things that have plagued this team the last year or two, you would talk about the offensive line, and it's going to be a remade offensive line. It's going to look different. It's going to be coached different.
Yeah.
You would talk about the secondary. It's going to look different. It's going to feel different.
Well, I think that should be I'm not saying it's going to be the best secondary in the country, but I think that's going to be the most improved position on the team. And by the way, they were really encouraging this spring, and that was without a 5-star in Bussey, a 5-star in Ricks. That was without a team captain at Central Michigan and Jones. I mean, and maybe somebody else, but just off the top of my head, that's 3 guys that are about to be added, to that defensive backfield that weren't even available in the spring.
Well, and I want to remind people, a year ago, right around now, you cautioned us.
And that was part 1. We'll get to part 2 on the other side. Got a quick hit a break here to stay on the clock. You're listening to TexAgs Radio, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers. Welcome back in. TexAgs Radio presented by David Gardner's Jewelers. Rollo Insurance Studio, Nick Savage in for David Nuno. We'll get to part 2 with him and Billy Lucci right here as they continue their conversation on A&M football and their expectations heading into the 2024 season.
O-line, I would say the hiring of Adazio is what did it. And then in the secondary, it was just recruiting misses that caught up to you.
Yeah, and how much of this season will be on what A&M does or what others do? And I guess let me phrase it better. I kind of butchered that, but
be a lot on both of those things.
But how much of it do you think is like A&M success this year will be based on some of the things we've talked about, or just how good the conference is? Because
it's both. I mean,
it's got to be.
It's always both because, like, the last couple years, it hasn't been that great compared to some of the years we've seen in this SEC, where, like, if Texas A&M would have just been a little bit better, you could have almost – and I think Ole Miss has done this. I think Ole Miss could peak this year. They haven't been a great team, but they've won 10 games, and they might have done it 2 years in a row, but they're like 2 out of 3 years.
2 out of the last 3 years.
They've been getting by. Like, tell me the great wins they have. There's almost none. There's almost none.
They've won the games they have to.
But the teams aren't that good. Like, Arkansas stinks. Mississippi State has stunk. Auburn has not been good the last couple of years. A&M's been average to bad. You know, 1 year they were bad. But leave A&M out because you're saying, like, I'm saying what A&M could have accomplished. The Aggies lost a couple years ago to Billy Napier, Florida team, when they had all their players out with the flu or whatever kind of. I almost cussed. That was so whatever kind of nonsense that was. But you look at the last couple of years and you go, South Carolina hasn't been any good. They beat A&M up there because you spot them 17 points with a bad snap and a kickoff return. Just ridiculousness, and you still almost win. That's how average they were. They were bad. I can go up and down it. And again, Ole Miss, for their 10 wins, the last 3 games against A&M have come down to the wire. In Oxford, you know, that game where they had 15-0 and they had first and goal to take the lead when it was 15-10 in the fourth quarter. Then you had here, Connor Wigman's first start, 31-28. And Aggies controlled that game in the first half. And then you had last season a missed field goal at the end when Max Johnson came to life in the second half. So, I mean, it was there to take advantage of. And I think LSU too. LSU hasn't been that good. I mean, the year they were good, they went 9-3, and A&M beat the brakes off of them here. An A&M team that had 4 wins going in, you know, like kicked their ass up and down the field. And so the last 2 years, Jimbo and the Aggies really failed to take advantage, and that was year 5 and 6 under Jimbo. And considering the way year 3 went, you really thought they could have turned that corner and just taken it and run with it. You know, I'd say the last 2 years, the last 3 years. Now, in this new scheduling model, David, it depends on who you play. And I look at, like, Texas' schedule. It's kind of a cakewalk.
I think so.
But you look at A&M's, that it's not a cakewalk, but it's also not murderer's row. You don't have to play Ole Miss. And Ole Miss on the road would be really – you don't have to play Ole Miss.
Georgia.
You don't have to play Georgia. You don't have to play Tennessee. You should be solid. You don't have to play Alabama. You got tough ones. This is what the difference between A&M and Texas. You're at Auburn. You're at Florida. Texas is home against Florida. They're home against Kentucky. These teams that, you know,
home against Georgia.
They're home against Georgia. Well, A&M's home against LSU. You're home against Notre Dame. You're home against Texas. You're home against Missouri. But you got to play Missouri. See, to me, that's it's not as tough as it could be because I don't see Alabama. I don't see Ole Miss. I don't see Georgia, okay? I don't see Tennessee. I don't see OU. Those are like 5 of the top 8 teams projected in the SEC. But I do see Missouri, LSU, and Texas. Guess what? I also see them all at home. It gets confusing, though, when you're at Florida. A lot of talent on that team and desperate. They're playing at home. At Mississippi State, tough place to play regardless. At Auburn, a team that a lot of people think could make a big jump this year, and you're playing them there late. At South Carolina, always a tough place to play. I believe that game's in that night window too. So even the road trips, when you go on paper and say, okay, A&M probably better than those 4 SEC teams on the road, but those are all, for different reasons, pretty freaking tough places to play. The one that Texas has like that, outside of Kyle Field, that's a rivalry. That just goes into that tough category. At Arkansas. That'll be tough for Texas, I think, having to go there. But A&M's got landmines on the road against the teams that we think and they should be better than. But I still think the schedule lays out middle of the road for A&M. It's not overly tough, like compared to what you could get in this league.
Win the games you should win.
Here's Texas' schedule.
Right? But if A&M wins the games they're supposed to win or should win, programs that we have more resources and programs that we
more
should
resources than Florida and Auburn. I mean, maybe a little Auburn, but not really. I mean, I think A&M's on their levels. Florida. I mean, right now, today, A&M's probably got better facilities than those schools, but you can't. I don't think you can say A&M should be at a higher level than the Florida Gators and the Auburn Tigers. I think they should be better teams this year. Very slightly, but
Nick,
you're on the road.
Put up the schedule because, and I'm not even talking about those programs.
Yeah.
Because I think going on the road at Florida, I'm saying
Missouri.
Mississippi
State.
Missouri, I still don't know about, but Mississippi State,
South
Arkansas,
Carolina.
South Carolina.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Those are all games that they shouldn't be tweener games. Those should be A&M games.
Yeah.
Now you have the 50-50 games, right?
But they're tweener games, David, because it's your first year under a new coach,
Right.
and you've lost like 13 games the last 2 years.
in the row. Oh, on the road.
And then on the road, yeah. But they're tweener games just because, yeah, you hired Mike Elko and you provided all this stuff to get past all that to where you win 90% of those games. In other words, top 10 program.
Right.
Playoff contender, national title contender, which is the ultimate goal of every hire for programs this size, whether you're in College Station, Austin, Norman, Baton Rouge, Auburn, wherever. But no, I mean, I think, though, the big question, going back to what you said, is, and I was talking to Peter Burns and Doring this morning on SEC radio, like LSU and Missouri, I think you should win those games at home. And that LSU is the same reason I'm saying Florida and Auburn are scary. I think A&M maybe is a little better than those teams, but when you go on the road in this league to places like that, they're more than talented enough to beat you. And I would say the same about Texas A&M with LSU and Mizzou coming to Kyle Field.
Yep.
And Notre Dame, but that's almost like an outlier because it's that first game and who knows what about who. But he was asking me about LSU and all bias aside, gun to head, will I pick Aggies or LSU in that one? I said, I think I'd pick A&M. LSU looks really strong in the O-line. Guess where A&M looks really strong?
Defensive line.
Garrett Nussmeier had some nice moments in a.
And we'll have to cut it right there. We're going to hit a break. One final segment on the other side here on TexAgs Radio, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers. Don't go anywhere. It's time to end the day with Double Dave's. Caller number 12 at 979-693-1150 will hook you up with your choice of a dozen pepperoni rolls or large one-topping pizza from Double Dave's, serving Aggieland since 1984. Double Dave's Pizza, serving up your favorite pizza and world-famous pepperoni rolls with reliable in-house delivery, bringing piping hot goodness straight to your door. Just click doubledaves.com and your favorites are on their way. Just about 3 minutes or so left on the program today. Again, David will be out the rest of the week. Bronny will be in the host chair tomorrow. I'll be back on Thursday, and then it'll be Luke Evangelist and Matthew Dawson in the host chairs on Friday. So that should be fun. We're looking forward to that. I wanted to clarify, because a few people jumping on me, the satisfied with 6-6 comment. That's just what I was thinking in the moment. Again, I don't speak for any of you, any of the fan base. I don't speak for anyone here at TexAgs. That's just what I thought in the moment. But I get it. I'm there with you. I don't think that's going to happen. So we'll see. But Carson Stein, and I'll bring in Luke Evangelist. Luke, what do you want to talk about?
I want to talk about what a great job Nick Savage has done today. You know, it's seamless, essentially. You couldn't even tell that David Nuno was missing because Nick did such a great job. Everyone's holding down the fort back here. Nick, phenomenal job today, and I cannot wait to see what you do on Thursday as well.
Thanks, dude. Y'all are acting like it's my first time I've hosted the show. This is like my 10th or so show I've hosted. It's like it's all right now, you know? It's like I don't get nervous about it anymore.
Yeah, you're a veteran. I just, it's never a bad time to praise someone for a great job, and you really do a great job. You
hear that, Carson? He wants me to say something similar on Friday when him and Matthew
What?
are hosting.
No.
So, I don't know if I will do that. Carson, you got any texts or any thoughts as we exit the show here on a Tuesday?
No texts or anything coming in, but I do want to back Luke up with this, Nick Savage. Maybe we might need to start calling him Nick Nuno, how good he's hosting TexAgs. So,
hey, you know what the kids call what's happening right now? They call this glazing. This is called glazing when it's just unnecessary complimenting. It was good the first time, Carson, but now you're just piling on and you're glazing him. So if we can just leave that at the door, please. Thank you.
I got nothing. That'll do it for TexAgs Radio on a Tuesday. Louis Bellina up on the other side. Come back for tomorrow. Bronny will be here and talk a lot of baseball. Again, he's working on something cool. Should have quite a few guests on this show tomorrow. So keep it tuned right here on TexAgs, and we'll see you tomorrow. See you mañana, as David says.